Hey guys, welcome back. So today we will learn about loops and range function. So let's get started with loops. First of all, what is meant by loop? The concept of loop is things that have to happen over and over again. The first type of loop I want to introduce you to is something called the for loop, and it can be used really easily in combination with something we learned in our previous video, which is about list. By using a for loop like this, we can go through each item in a list and perform some action with each individual item. So let's try it out and practice. First, let's say we had a list called fruits and it contained three items: apple, pear, and peach. If we wanted to access each item in this list individually and print it out one by one, then we would use a for loop. So if we start out with the keyword for and then we give a name to a single item, so in this case we might call it fruit, and then we use the in keyword, and finally the list that we want to loop through, which is our fruits here. Now we cap it off with a colon and we go on the next line and notice how it's intended there. Now I'm going ahead and print the value of each of the fruit variables. And if I run this code, you will see that it loops through my list of fruits, and for each of the fruits inside the list, it prints it out into the console: apple, pear, peach, in that order. Now, the important thing to realize here is that basically you can imagine that behind the scenes what this code is doing is it's taking this list of fruits and it's assigning a variable named fruit to each of them. So the first time this runs fruit is equal to apple, the second time this runs the fruit is equal to pear, and finally fruit is equal to peach. And this really emphasizes the most important aspects of loops. The loops allows us to execute the print statement three times, but our for loop isn't limited to just executing a single statement. We don't just have to print out the name of an item in the list. We can execute a whole block of statements multiple times, and we can do many things inside this for loop, and by inside I mean intended. So let's say that in addition to printing out the fruit, I'm going to write another print statement, and I'm going to not only print out the name of the fruit, but I'm also going to say fruit plus pie. So when I run the code, it prints out apple, and then it prints out apple pie, and then it goes back to the start and it assigns the variable fruit to the next item: pear, pear pie, peach, peach pie. So this is how we can implement a simple for loop that loops through a list and assigns a variable name to each of the items in the list in order, and then inside the for loop, after the colon, after some indentation, we can do something with that temporary variable for each of the items. Now, I have been talking a lot about the concept of being inside a for loop versus being outside a for loop. And this is really important. Whenever you see a colon, say in our if statement that we saw previously or the for loop that we are using here, the indentation is really important, because if it's indented, then it means that it's inside the for loop, and these instructions all get carried out for as many times as the for loop will need to repeat. A really good example of when loops comes in really handy is, you know how Bart Simpson get punished and it has to write out a sentence over and over again on the blackboard. Well, if only Bart was a programmer, then he would be able to use loops to do this, and he would be able to chill in the corner. Right? So, yeah, that's all about loops. Now, up to this point, we have only been using for loops in association with the list. So, we have been looping through the list and getting hold of each of the items in the list and then doing something with it, right? But we are not always going to be working with list and using for loops. Sometimes we might want to use a loop completely independent of a list. So, if we add all the numbers from 1 to 100, if you tie all of these numbers together, there's actually 50 pairs of 101. So we could just do 50 multiplied by 101, which is 5050. And that's how we figured out the answer. But this is really painful, right? We can actually do this calculation in less than a minute just by writing a few lines of code. But in order to do this, we first have to learn about using for loops with the range function. Now, the range function is something that is really helpful if you want to generate a range of numbers to loop through. And the syntax looks something like this. So, we have still got our for and our in keyword highlighted in blue, but instead of looping through a list, we define how our loop is going to work by creating a range. So in this case, I'm creating a range between A and B, and then I'm going to get hold of each number in that range and do something with that number. So for example, if I wrote 4 number in range, and then my range is going to be 1 and 10. So this is going to be the range that I'm going to create between 1 and 10. Then I want to get hold of each of the number inside that range. And this is going to be between 1 and 10 and not including 10. So if I go ahead and print out the numbers that I create from a loop, then you will see that what happens is it prints 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but not the last digit, which I have include here. So if I wanted all of the numbers from 1 to 10, I actually have to get a range between 1 and 11. And now when you run the code, you can see that it goes from 1 all the way up to 10. Now, the range function will step through all the numbers from the start to end and it will increase by 1. Now, if you want it to increase by another number, then you have to add another comma to the end of it and to specify how large you want the step to be. So, let's say we change the step size to 3. Now, if I run the same code, you will see that it goes from the 1 and then it steps by 3 to 4 and then it steps by 3 and then it steps by 3 finally to 10. Now let's come back to the problem that I mentioned at the beginning. How can we add up all of the numbers from 1 to 100 by using code? Well, it's going to involve a full loop and it's going to involve the range function because we are going to get hold of every number in the range between 1 and 100. So we need to write 1 note 1. Once we have get hold of all of these numbers, it's as simple as using an accumulator. So let's say total is equal to 0 and then inside the loop, so that means intended, we are going to say total plus equals number. So now it's going to add every number in this range to the starting from 0. And this is basically going to give me the sum of every number from 1 to 100. So let's go ahead and print it out. And there you have it, 5050. So that's all about today's video. Consider subscribing my channel and join our WhatsApp community and Instagram, in which their link is given in the description below. So until next video, take care and bye bye.